Senator McKenzie.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. And I rise tonight to speak on the Australia's Food Processing Sector Select Committee report, inquiry into Australia's food processing sector, where the government response was actually handed down this week. And as a representative of rural and regional Australia, it was a pleasure to work on this select committee with Senator Colbeck and Senator Xenophon and others, where we actually travelled around Australia getting data whilst in opposition on the food processing sector. Right across Australia, but particularly, I think, for my home state of Victoria, the food processing capital of the nation. And I welcome this government's response to promote the food processing sector. The report was tabled in 2012 with 35 recommendations that the coalition in opposition found to be crucial to reduce the costs, red tape, to stimulate investment in the food processing sector and deal with some of the issues that the sector as a whole had identified. Food labelling laws, education and skill sets, research, competition law, etc. And the impact, indeed, of the carbon tax on this particular sector. And it's been 12 months since we've been in government, and of the 35 recommendations of this report, as the government's response notes, has noted all 35 recommendations, but I think importantly, we're a government of action, and we've actually started dealing with many of those recommendations and actually not only dealing with them but putting it into action. And I want to speak about that a little bit tonight. In my home state of Victoria, the food processing sector is critical to our economy. It's turned over $25.4 billion and employs more than 133,000 people across the value chain, and we export to over 100 countries worldwide. Employment in the food product manufacturing sector has defied the general decline in manufacturing employment in Australia. Whilst employment in manufacturing as a whole has decreased by 7.7% over the 5 years to August 2014, employment in food product manufacturing increased by 3.1%, and Victoria accounts for 24% of the gross value of Australian food and beverage industry. It's because this sector is so important that we've been proactive in introducing reforms and fulfilling the recommendations that were put forward. I echo the comments in the government's response to this report that the Australian government has commenced implementing a number of election commitments to boost business competitiveness as well as assist the food processing industry. And as I mentioned earlier, getting rid of the carbon tax, I think, was this government's preeminent response to assisting the food processing industry remain competitive and to be able to grow, particularly when you think that the majority of workers in the food processing industry are actually working in rural and regional Australia, underpinning the local economies of our towns and regional cities. And I think it's incredibly important when you look at Gary Dawson, CEO of the Food and Grocery Council, stated about the carbon tax. One of the things we found with the impact of the carbon tax was that because food processing is such a trade-exposed sector, processing companies had very little or no capacity to pass through those increased costs to the retailer and therefore the consumer. So it went straight to the bottom line of the company and had a direct impact on the viability and profitability of the company. And do you know what that means? That means less money for people to employ people. It means less jobs. That's right. Less jobs in regional Australia. And that was the actual outcome of those opposites' grand carbon tax plan. The second thing that I think we dealt with within the food processing inquiry was competition policy, and we actually made recommendations around, and recommendation 4, the committee recommended that the government initiate an independent review on the competition provisions of the Competition and Consumer Act, recommending that we should take particular consideration of the misuse of market power, creeping acquisitions, predatory pricing and unconscionable conduct. We also went on to look at the role of an ombudsman in managing the relationships that exist within the food processing supply chain. And these are key to our government's response. We've actually initiated, under Minister Bilson, a review, the Harper Review of the Competition and Consumer Act, which is dealing with those precise issues, seeking feedback from farmers' groups, from food and grocery councils, from consumer groups, from small businesses, to actually ensure that our Competition and Consumer Act actually is a 21st century document that deals with the reality of market power, of how it's used and sometimes abused within the context of our domestic economy. And I'm very, very proud of a minister that's taken those recommendations by the horns, if you like, and is dealing with that through the Harper Review, and I look forward to the continuing outcome of that particular process. But we're not alone in our moves as a federal government to improve the food processing sector. In my home state of Victoria, the coalition government has seen Victoria's food and fibre exports increase from $7.3 billion to a record $11.4 billion this financial year, an increase of 56%. There were 77 trade missions to 33 countries, which support over 3,000 Victorian businesses, developing a $100 million Food to Asia action plan and a $6.2 million international engagement strategy. Where the former federal government failed in promoting trade, the state government of Victoria, the coalition government, has been exceptional under its agricultural minister, Peter Walsh, its regional development minister, Peter Ryan, and its premier, Dennis Napthine. The three, as a triumvirate, have been unrelenting in their promotion of our food and fibre industry, in their promotion of our state, not only domestically but right throughout the world, leading super trade missions. And I sit on the Joint Standing Committee for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, and right now we're conducting an inquiry into a potential for a trade agreement with Gulf nations. But at Victoria, and what we're hearing through submissions, everyone we talk to talks about the superior approach of the Victorian government when it comes to promoting their local product in an international market. And hats off to the state coalition government for promoting the great state of ag, Victoria. The Victorian government has just announced a $48 million dairy investment in Packham Dairy, creating 52 new full-time jobs in Shepparton. Similarly, Australian Lamb in Colac, the state government has announced a $2.35 million plate freezer investment to boost exports, creating 25 new jobs in Colac. Hardwick's Meat Stage 1 boning room and cold storage expansion. Another project announced by the state coalition government includes a $1.5 million investment generating 50 new jobs. It's projects like this that ensure our food processing industry continues to thrive, and I welcome the commitment from the recent government response. I similarly congratulate Premier Dennis Napthine, Deputy Premier Peter Ryan and the Victorian Minister for Agriculture and Food Security Peter Walsh for their ongoing efforts in improving the food processing sector. I want to stress to the people of Victoria that the food processing sector is such an important industry to our state economy, and this current state government is committed to further investment. And it's only a state coalition government that will deliver that investment and those jobs directly into regional Victoria, directly into Colac, directly into the heart of food processing in my state, Shepparton. And just while I'm on Shepparton, whilst we were conducting our inquiry, I want to recognise the 2 days that we actually had in Shepparton, the seat of Murray, the former Blackjack seat where I know our current candidate, Greg Barr, is running hard and supporting the local food processing industry, and is very, very welcome of the state coalition government's continued investment into jobs and food manufacturing in that part of my state, in central Victoria, as the Victorian Senator. So we heard from Food Growers Victoria, Greenham, the Greater Shepparton City Council. We had the Australian Dairy Industry Council. What a great fortnight it's been for dairy. Thank you, Minister Rob. Hazeldene's Chicken Farm, looking at poultry and growing a variety of food production and being able to process them in regional Victoria. Getting them to market, getting them to port is another important goal, and the state coalition government is committed to ensuring the East-West Link will actually provide a transport network that will assist the great clean green product that is being grown in Victoria and indeed processed in Victoria. Will be able to get onto that port, get out of that dock and get to the markets that are waiting for it right around the world, thanks to the super trade missions of the state coalition governments. Vote 1 coalition this Saturday.